All right, guys, section two. Here we go. Language and culture. All right. What is language? Language, how we communicate. This could be through spoken word. This could be through gestures. All right. Facial expressions. So we're talking about a lot of things here when we talk about what actual language is. And after this, I think you'll get a better appreciation for how important language is, referring to how it is a part of our behaviors and how we interact with one another. All right. So let's get right into this with symbols. All right. I want to talk about symbols and what they are within culture. So, as a symbol is a thing that stands for or represents something else. Um, and what's important here is that we attach meaning to the symbol and then we use it to communicate with others. And you see this all the time. Um, and become very, very important. Think of all the nonverbal communication that you would use with just your hands. All right. Um, okay. Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right. Waving. All right. We talked about, remember the one when we did symbolic interaction with the middle finger? All right. Hopefully you don't have to use that too often. All right. So there's a lot of things. And also beyond just as a form of communication, all right, there are maybe pictures or signs that mean something, all right, in way to communicate. All right. Think of symbols with street signs. Okay. So these become very important. Now, what's interesting about symbols is that these are not universal. Gestures vary around the world. Okay. If you look at the picture, typical thumbs up. All right. In American culture, this is a sign of approval, right? You give the old thumbs up. In the Middle East and parts of West Africa, this is equivalent to the middle finger. All right. So think about this. This is what we talk about this. We attach meaning to it and we start to use it as a form of communication. This becomes very important if you were, let's say, in the Middle East. So, and as you go and you travel and you go to different places, you'll realize that there are different gestures and different that have different meaning. But it's a way to communicate. All right. So, but let's look at how our language and culture related. All right. Language and culture related is that language allows us to create culture. Let's take, for example, the Wright brothers. Through the use of language, they were able to read, they were able to discuss, and they were able to combine and collaborate these ideas and technology to build their airplane and fly. Okay. So it's debated. You guys have to look this up if you're interested in it. That there's actually somebody out of Germany who was really the first to fly, but I don't know. All right. So, but think about this. Think about a lot of the great things that have been done in our society. It's our use of language that has allowed us to get some of these things done. And even in major events in American history, think of the use of language. There's iconic like radio transmissions, or think of FDR after Pearl Harbor. Okay, what that means. It's 4 score and 7 years ago. All right, this language, this reading of these words, and how it relates to culture, incredibly important. Now, the effects of language, and this is something to note as this goes with your assignment. This is a big part of your assignment. Um, Language allows human experience to be cumulative. And what does this mean? If something accumulates, all right? This allows humans to pass their experiences, their ideas, and knowledge to others. This is one of my favorite things about, spending time with my parents and my grandparents, as they would tell me stories of the past, all right? Or they taught me things, okay? This happened to them, and so this is what they pass on to you. I give the example. How did you find out that fire will hurt you? Hopefully, your first experience, the first time you heard that fire will hurt you, was not because you got burnt. We've all probably had some type of burn. Okay. But it's those types of things. I mean, that's we're talking about just safety, the use of language. All right. And there are things that that were passed down probably from your great, 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 great grandparents, possibly. Okay. That got passed on from generation to generation that are still viable today. Okay. Number two, language provides a social or shared past. So we talk about past events. We develop this understanding about what those events mean. Example I give is people discussing September 11th. Okay, you guys probably every September 11th, maybe not this year though, in class, you probably had teachers discuss with you what their experience was. You probably had assignments where you had to go home and ask somebody, what was it like? Okay, for you guys, you weren't born. So all you guys have to go through is through videos and through documentaries and through all these different things that are out there. But some of the greatest stories you're going to hear are those first person ones, somebody that lived through it, whether they were in New York City or whether they were in Ohio. All right. So language provides us that social or shared past. And you get them just family stories, or you get a little history of where you live. Okay. What it used to be like, that when the roll your eye moment when you're riding with somebody and they tell you, 20 years ago, this was that and this was that. And before you know it, as you roll your eyes now, in 20 years yourself, you'll be telling those same stories because I didn't think I'd do it. All right. I'm still telling the same stories that my dad told me. All right. Number three, language provides a social or shared future. We use language to plan our future, including our day-to-day tasks. Okay. I will let you know I can make it tomorrow. Okay. I won't be there today. What are you doing next month? Okay. This is use of, like I said, this is a created language. I mean, and this is taking it a step further. All right. But these are things, ways that we can communicate to help in our day to day tasks. It's that simple. Number four, language allows shared perspectives. How do you realize what somebody else's point of view is? I put it there. We have to first communicate with one another. So, for me to understand what it's like to be a female in our society, I have to talk with who? Another male? No. Two males talking about what it's like to be female, they're probably going to come up with a lot of things that aren't true because their perspective is from the male perspective. So we get shared perspectives by actually communicating with another. To understand the plight or the journey of someone else, you have to communicate with them. Opens up our mind. Language allows shared goal-directed behavior. Think about this. Most of you are in some type of extracurricular or you've been in a sport at some point in time. And language plays a huge role in sharing that common goal, right? There's common terms that you'll use, common vocabulary. And it's this idea, you've heard it, like we all have to be on the same page. What does that mean? Okay. Same thing within a business, right? Our job is to deliver the best product and the best service to our customers. So what is that business? What is their mission? And do all of their employees understand what that mission is when working there? It becomes important. You can see this within your family. Our shared goal, all right, is to treat everyone with respect. So what type of words do you use, okay, to show your children what that means? Do you do that within your own home? What are your gestures? What is your body language? All right, all of that is a part of this. Okay, let's move on. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis of linguistic relativity. What is this? It's essentially this. It's basically that language um, tells you about the reality. So, reality of what? So, our ideas about reality depend largely on our language. And what this can do is tell you and sometimes lean into you. It can explain a little bit about a culture. It can let you know what's important within a culture sometimes. Okay? Just look at this list of words that I put there. Nanosecond, millisecond, moment, minute, hour, era, interim, recurrent, century, light year, afternoon, eternal, annual, meanwhile, regularly. And these are just a few. Let's be honest. We are infatuated with time. All right? In our minds there's not enough time in the day, common phrase, right? We are infatuated with time. Okay? Why is this? Right? Think about what we've discussed so far. Why are we infatuated with time? Okay? We want to fit so much into one day. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. Depends. But the idea, okay, is that you have to realize that our culture is infatuated with time. It's a reality. If I were to say tomorrow, no clocks, no phone, nothing that will let you know what time it is, there's probably a little bit of anxiety just thinking that way. Okay? One of the things I used to do, and this is where the a bad part of virtual school. I used to put a box. Those of you that were in my government class remember this maybe from last year. I used to put a box over the clock and I collected everybody's phone during this class period. And it would drive people nuts. Okay. Some people, there'd always be two or three where they were pretty cool with it, but it would drive people nuts wondering what time it is. And I always knew what time it was. Okay. And then when they got their phone back, or some of them that would just completely forget about it, they'd be like, you know what? This was kind of interesting. Just the fact that I wasn't looking up at the clock. I was paying attention to what you were talking about. Um, and to take that step back from our infatuation with time actually was pleasant for them. Just interesting. So when looking at this, oh, come on now. Does this mean we are prisoners of our language? No, we're not. We're not trapped by our language. All right. There's different things. Um, we can learn new languages, which often leads us to learn about new cultures. Um, but I mean, we do obviously. It says this here. We do confine ourselves culturally to the language that we learned at birth. Okay, we're going to learn other ones, but when we learn those other ones, it's interesting because it really opens us up to those cultures. Like if you take Spanish, all right, think about what that does for you in terms of learning Spanish culture. Just learning the language alone, how much do you learn? All right. You're in a lot better place to go over and visit Spain or Mexico, all right, or other areas that speak Spanish than somebody that doesn't, just by knowing the language, okay, because it opens the door to their culture. Um, but when we stay in our bubble, okay, we oftentimes, and that's not necessarily mean you have to learn their language, but learning their language is beyond just learning how to speak, right? It's about learning some of their culture too. That's how you change and open up your mind a little bit and change our views of the world. Um, okay. So, what other factors shape our perceptions of reality? Cultures differ. Um, and so, with this difference amongst culture, it influences how the members of this culture experience the world. Now, in Japan, there are, in some hotels, all right, there are paper walls as sound barriers, really thin. Okay. It says Americans in Japanese hotels will complain about the sound too loud. All right. privacy is not as important. In Germany, privacy is very, very important. You always hear in the United States about how we have this open door policy. I have this open door policy. Usually in the first day of school, I would tell people, I got an open door policy. Okay, you can come see me whenever you want. Germany, it's a little bit different. Their privacy is so important that they often have a closed door policy. So that's why American firms that would open in Germany sometimes have issues with this, just because it's just a difference in culture. All right. In language, like I said, leads you into understanding one's culture a little bit more. Now, for the assignment, obviously, if you read the directions when you open this up, you're doing it maybe as you're listening to this video. Okay, so hopefully you're about done. But if you have any questions, make sure that you let me know. All right, that is language. The lesson will be good if you haven't heard it yet, the one that we do live.